Hey guys, tonight we're slipping barefoot through thick jungle vines, the air buzzing with cicadas and distant drumbeats. The stars above you shimmer like cold embers, until one by one they vanish behind a creeping shadow. You tilt your head. Something's off. The howler monkeys just stopped screaming, and the villagers are kneeling, faces pressed to the earth. You look up again, and the sun is being eaten alive. Welcome to the ancient Maya world, where the line between sky and spirit was as thin as bark paper, and the consequences of misunderstanding the cosmos could be fatal. You're about to learn how these jungle mathematicians, without telescopes or time zones, tracked the heavens with coral stones, firelight, and terrifying accuracy. But fair warning, if you were a peasant caught outside during an eclipse, you probably wouldn't survive this episode. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and what time it is where you are. Let's see who's the latest night owl in the bunch. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're not in 2025 anymore. You're in the humid underworld of the Yucatan Peninsula. And the year is, well, it depends who you ask. The Mayans would say it's 13. The start, or maybe the end, of the world. You're standing in the shadow of a limestone pyramid. It smells like incense, wet moss, and sweat. Children are hushed. Elders chant. And in the middle of the plaza, a figure cloaked in jaguar skin raises his arms to the sky. He's not a priest, not exactly. More like a time technician. His job? Know when the gods will get hungry for sunlight. The Mayans didn't just look at the sky. They lived in it. To them, the heavens were a calendar, a warning system, and a divine soap opera all rolled into one. They believed the universe operated on vast, overlapping cycles. Think of it like celestial gears, one wheel tracking days, another tracking years, and another tracking longer, almost mythical spans of time. When the teeth of these wheels lined up just right, stuff got weird. Here's the first big history fact to settle into your pillow with. The Mayans created not one, but 3 interlocking calendar systems, the most famous being the long count, which tracked time from the beginning of their world. They used it to mark major cosmic events, like the birth of Venus or, you guessed it, solar eclipses. And they calculated all this using 0. That's right. While your European ancestors were still writing numbers with letters and occasionally setting each other on fire for fun, the Maya were doing positional math with a concept the Romans couldn't wrap their togas around. But here's where it gets juicy. Those priests didn't just stare at stars and scribble in codices. They carved records into stone, buried time capsules under plazas, and, this is the weird part, they whispered prophecies based on what the coral said. Okay, technically, the coral didn't talk, but we'll get to that. For now, imagine you're lying on a woven mat, staring at the sky like your life depends on it, because it kinda does. Every shadow matters. Every bird that stops singing, every gust of wind that comes at the wrong hour. To predict an eclipse was to prove your city was still in cosmic sync, that the gods hadn't forgotten you, and that no, you don't need to burn another cornfield in sacrifice. Yet. So how did they do it? No observatories, no metal tools, no Apple Watch tracking moon phases, just limestone, coral, and obsession. You squint toward the horizon, and there it is. El Caracol, the spiral-shaped observatory near Chichen Itza. Doesn't look like much, just a fat stone tower with windows pointed in weird directions. But this is where things get spooky. During certain times of the year, the setting sun shoots beams right through those little slits in the wall, landing perfectly on engraved stones inside. You could say it's just a coincidence, or you could admit that maybe, just maybe, someone was paying a lot more attention to the sky than you are. And here's your fringe fact of the night. Some scholars believe the Mayans used bioluminescent bugs in water bowls to track subtle movements of the stars. Fireflies in a bowl, flickering like miniature constellations. Trippy? Absolutely. But plausible. After all, these were the same people who mapped Venus's movements down to the day. Now let's be real for a second. Could every Mayan priest really predict a solar eclipse? Or were a few of them just really good at faking it when the sky turned black? Historians still argue whether these predictions were widespread scientific breakthroughs or the secret weapon of an elite few cities. You might not know this, but solar eclipses were terrifying back then. Not interesting terrifying. Apocalypse is happening right. Now terrifying. To the Maya, it wasn't the moon blocking the sun. It was a celestial monster devouring light. Think sky jaguar, or a giant serpent, or worse, a god who'd finally lost patience with your petty sacrifices. When the sky darkened, people didn't grab eclipse glasses and picnic blankets. They screamed, they cried, they sacrificed things. Sometimes chickens, sometimes blood, sometimes other things. More on that later. But if you, the humble sky watcher, could predict this in advance, then you weren't just smart, you were divine. You had cracked the code of the gods. So tonight, as you lie here half tangled in your blankets, imagine you're that priest. The villagers are watching. The wind is too still. You reach into a clay pouch and pull out a piece of white coral, smooth, round, patterned with tiny carvings. It's not just pretty, it's math. It's memory. It's your cheat code to the cosmos. You place the coral stone beside others in a specific pattern. A calendar, yes, but also a puzzle, a prophecy, a warning. You trace your finger along the dots and bars etched on the stone. You nod. It will happen tomorrow. The sun will disappear at noon, and the villagers gasp. The jaguar-masked dancers kneel. And you just became a little more powerful than yesterday. Don't get too comfortable. We've only just begun. Section 2. You climb the ancient stone steps barefoot, your toes curling around the cool limestone. Each slab slightly concave from centuries of ritual feet before yours. The air is thick with that earthy jungle perfume. Wet bark, crushed leaves, and something metallic. Maybe blood, maybe not. Ahead of you looms a round stone tower, squat and squatty like a beheaded snail shell. This is El Caracol, nicknamed the snail by modern archaeologists because of its spiral interior staircase. Cute, right? But don't be fooled. This isn't some jungle Airbnb with good views. It's an observatory, one of the most precise sky-watching structures in pre-Columbian history. And the kicker: no lenses, no mirrors. Just math, stone, and obsessive patience. You duck through the low entrance. Inside, it's darker than your average blackout, and the ceiling smells like old fire and guano. You glance upward. The shaft of sunlight beaming through one of the odd-angled windows cuts through the dust like a divine laser. And just like that, you're standing in the Mayan version of a planetarium, except here, the sun and stars do the presenting. Now here's your first heavy-hitting historical fact to chew on while you get comfy. El Caracol's windows and walls are precisely aligned with astronomical events. Solstices, equinoxes, Venus rising, even, yes, solar eclipses. Archaeologists have confirmed this alignment, and yet the mystery remains. How the heck did they build it with no metal tools or written blueprints? Here's a quirky twist. Some believe the spiral design was acoustically tuned to amplify the sounds of chants and instruments. So not only did you get light to line up perfectly, but the rituals sounded cooler too. Welcome to the jungle's version of IMAX. You trace the path of the sunbeam as it lands on a carved notch in the stone. That little groove isn't decorative. It's a date stamp. It only lights up on a very specific day when the sun aligns just right. And when that happens, time to update the cosmic calendar. Maybe even announce an upcoming eclipse. The Mayans didn't separate science and religion. They wove them together into something terrifyingly effective. When the heavens moved, it wasn't a coincidence. It was a message. You just had to be smart or scared enough to decode it. And decode it they did, with stunning precision. They knew the solar year wasn't 365 days, not quite. Their calendar pinned it at 365. 2,420 days, which is more accurate than the Gregorian calendar we use today. Let that sink in. You, with your satellite clock, are technically less precise than a priest with a stick, a stone, and a really good sense of shadow length. Inside El Caracol, you can imagine that priest at work, not hunched over scrolls or telescopes, but squinting through narrow window slits day after day, year after year, patient, focused, probably sunburned. They weren't waiting for a eureka moment. They were building an astronomical archive, one shadow at a time. Now, let's spice things up with a little fringe theory. You ready? Some wild-eyed researchers claim the spiral interior wasn't just symbolic. It might have been used to track sound vibrations that matched planetary frequencies. Basically, the Mayans had a stone building that sang with the stars. Cool or completely made up? You decide. Historians still argue whether the spiral staircase was purely architectural, spiritual, or plot twist, a functional part of astronomical calculation. Outside, the sky begins to shift. The light feels off. Not night, not day. Just wrong. The birds stop chirping. Even the bugs hold their breath. This is what happens when the sun starts to go. You're standing beside a carved slab outside the observatory. The glyphs etched into it are subtle. Dots, bars, animal heads, celestial eyes. To the untrained eye, it looks like Mayan fan fiction. But to the astronomer priest, it's the record of eclipse intervals. The Maya knew about the Saros cycle, that eclipses happen in repeating patterns every 18-ish years. Not by that name, of course, but they observed and tracked it. This is your second big historical point. Mayan astronomers identified eclipse patterns centuries before modern science gave them names. They could predict solar and lunar eclipses years in advance, terrifying accuracy included. And the people, they didn't get to question it. When the priest said, "The sky will darken," and the sky actually did darken, well, that pretty much guaranteed their rent would get paid. In blood. But also corn. Mostly corn. Let's get speculative again, just for fun. There's one fringe idea that suggests El Caracol wasn't just for watching the sky. It may have also been used for timed ceremonies, where priests would trigger eclipse-related rituals exactly as the sun passed through key windows. Imagine watching a perfectly synchronized fire ceremony where the moment the flames erupt, the sun vanishes behind the moon. Coincidence? Not to the people watching. That's not astronomy. That's magic. You lean against a mossy stone column, sweat running down your back. The air is heavy. Behind you, a jaguar mask rests on a clay pedestal, mouth agape, as if it too is waiting for the sky to flicker. You close your eyes. You can almost hear the crowd gathered outside. Hundreds of people, silent, clutching children, hiding behind woven mats. Not because of the dark, but because of the certainty. Someone told them this would happen, and it did. That someone watched the sky from here. El Caracol is just one of many sky-watching tools in the Mayan arsenal, but it's the most poetic. Because it didn't use moving parts or clever lenses. It used your patience. It made you part of the process. And if you waited long enough, you'd know exactly when the gods were going to blink. And when they did, you better be ready. The spiral shadows grow longer. The sunbeam fades. You back away slowly, down the steps, feeling the sweat dry on your arms. The jungle doesn't make a sound. But the stones remember. Section 3. You step down from the stone observatory and blink up at the blazing sky. It's so bright you have to squint until it isn't. A chill slithers across your skin. You pause. No clouds. No rain. Just an invisible force pulling the light straight out of the air. The sun begins to vanish, not behind a cloud, not gradually, but with purpose, like something enormous just took a bite. The parrots fall silent. Chickens panic. Somewhere nearby, a child starts crying. And you're just trying to figure out why the world is ending at noon. To the Mayans, solar eclipses weren't celestial quirks. They were cosmic battles. Imagine watching the most important light in your life. Your food, your fire, your God, slowly disappear in the middle of the day. No warning. No explanation. Just darkness. Well, unless you were one of them. The priest class. timekeepers, the God whisperers. To those people, this wasn't terror. It was timing. But to everyone else, pure, primal dread. Let's settle in with a simple fact. Mayan myths interpreted eclipses as sky serpents or jaguars devouring the sun. Not figuratively, literally. Imagine a beast of the heavens rising up from the underworld to feast. These creatures weren't poetic symbols. They were actual threats. The same way you worry about your phone battery dying on 2%. A Mayan peasant worried about the sun never coming back. So what do you do when the world goes dark? You scream. You burn incense. You maybe stab your own ear a little. Just a little. Because blood sacrifices help, right? You throw corn in the fire, howl to the gods, hide the children, and hope the priests can fix it. That's the juicy contradiction of Mayan society. While the masses panicked, a select few nodded calmly, already knowing what was happening, or at least pretending to. They weren't fortune tellers. They were mathematicians in feathered capes. But this moment, the moment when the light vanishes, is the pivot point. This is where power shifts, because when a guy in a jaguar mask says, "Don't worry, the sun will be back at exactly the third drum beat," and it does come back on that exact beat, you start giving that guy more corn, and maybe your daughter's hand in marriage, or your nephew's blood. It's not all superstition either. There's logic buried under all that ritual. See, eclipses were predictable, but only if you had records, long records, passed down from priest to priest, carved into coral stones, etched into codices, murmured in dreamlike chants during mushroom-fueled rituals. Yeah, hallucinogens were a thing, but we'll get to that later, I promise. Tonight, you're lying here, and I want you to imagine you're not scared. You're the one holding the knowledge. You watched the shadows, counted the days, tracked the cycles of Venus and the moon, and now, it's happening. You're not surprised. You're validated. The fringe fact of the night? Some Mayan myths say the sun and moon were lovers, constantly chasing one another across the sky. But during an eclipse, they caught each other, and that moment of reunion was dangerous. It upset the balance of the universe. That's why the sky darkened. Not because something was lost, but because something forbidden happened. Kinda romantic. Kinda terrifying. And the best part? That interpretation helped the priests, because they could say, "Oh, the sun's just taking a break after a dramatic celestial hookup." And boom, crisis softened. Still, historians still argue whether the common folk ever really understood the astronomy, or if the whole thing was just weaponized mysticism. Was it science for the elite and myth for the masses? Or did the Mayans genuinely believe both explanations at once? You watch the sun fade into a thin, glowing ring, a corona, a fire-ringed hole in the sky. This is when the rituals kick in. The chanting crescendos, drums pound. Somewhere, a conch shell blares, and feathers rustle as dancers erupt into motion. It's not a performance, it's defense. They believe these movements will scare the sky beast away. That sound and blood and movement will keep the world spinning. In one city-state, they might climb to a high pyramid and burn cacao, the sacred food of the gods. In another, they might pierce their tongues and spill blood on woven cloth, then burn it. sending the scent skyward like a message. In another, in the darker corners of the empire, there may be more permanent offerings, prisoners of war, willing sacrifices, occasionally the very astronomers who predicted it. Yeah, plot twist. If your prediction was off, if the darkness didn't come or stayed too long, you could be blamed. Imagine dying because you miscounted the lunar nodes. Let that sink in. You're lying on a stone platform, surrounded by flickering torches. The sun is a memory. The jungle watches. And you, maybe just a humble corn farmer, feel the weight of existence press on your chest. And then light returns. First as a glow, then a sliver, then a flood. The people gasp. The dancers fall still. Someone faints. A baby starts crying again. And the priest? He raises his hands, eyes closed, perfectly timed. It worked. The sun came back. Maybe it was your ritual. Maybe it was math. Maybe it was the gods feeling generous today. Doesn't matter. The priest called it. He wins. Again. You sit back, trembling. Not from fear, but from the raw emotional overload of having survived something cosmic. For the ancient Maya, eclipses were reminders of power, of timing, of life's fragility. They feared them, yes, but they also respected them. So tonight, as you close your eyes, imagine that moment. The sky gone black, the world holding its breath, and the possibility, just for a second, that you were watching a god's heartbeat pause and start again. Section 4. The morning after the eclipse, you're still shaking off the echo of drums and the scent of burnt offerings. Your dreams were filled with serpents slithering across the sky, their scales blacking out the sun. But the sun's back now, hot and smug, as if yesterday's drama never happened. Still, you know better. You were there. You saw what it did. Now you're following one of the priest astronomers to a shaded chamber tucked beneath the stone plaza. It's cooler here. Quiet. You can hear water dripping from the ceiling, counting time in its own way. In the center of the room sits a low stone table. On it lies a collection of strange objects, smooth, circular pieces of white coral, each one engraved with patterns of dots and lines. They don't look like much, somewhere between oversized coins and weird poker chips. But these stones are the heartbeat of Mayan astronomy. You kneel beside the table and reach for one. It's cool to the touch, surprisingly light. The grooves in it feel worn from fingers, not tools. This is your first introduction to what might be the most underestimated tool in ancient science: coral eclipse stones. Now here's your mainstream fact of the night. The Maya developed a base 20 numbering system and used a series of dots representing 1 and bars representing 5 to represent numerical values. This counting method appears across everything, from wall carvings to codices to, yes, coral stones like the one in your hand. And these weren't just numbers. They were timestamps, astronomical codes, bits of a much larger machine designed to track cosmic events. Coral wasn't just decorative to them. It was symbolic. Pulled from sacred waters, bleached by sun, carved by hand and stored in ceremonial bundles. These stones may have served as a portable archive, a pocket calculator for sky priests. Some researchers believe these stones represented eclipse intervals, specifically eclipse seasons. These are 173-day cycles when eclipses can occur due to the intersection of the moon's orbit and the ecliptic plane. And somehow, the Maya knew this. Maybe not with Greek letter equations, but they felt it in the math, in the repeated patterns that told them when the sky would crack open again. You watch the priest arrange several stones into a spiral pattern. Dot, bar, blank. He hums quietly. You don't know the song, but your skin tingles. Each stone, each placement, tells him something. Maybe the next darkening, maybe a warning, maybe a celebration, all from a handful of carved ocean rocks. Now here's your fringe tidbit. Some fringe theorists argue that the coral stones weren't just memory tools, but vibrational conduits, that priests would pass sound through them, clicking, tapping, humming, to feel out resonant frequencies tied to specific star patterns. Do we have proof of this? Not really. But can you not imagine some wild-eyed priest thumping a coral disc and swearing he could hear Venus humming back? Exactly. Meanwhile, your modern brain is screaming, but how? How did they know about these cycles without clocks, satellites, or Google? And here's where it gets mysterious. Historians still argue whether the Maya developed eclipse prediction independently or were influenced by earlier Mesoamerican civilizations like the Olmecs. Some claim it was homegrown genius. Others point to shared regional math techniques passed through priestly lineages like old family recipes, except instead of cookies, they made doomsday prophecies. Another theory? Dream work. That's right. Some Mayan sky watchers used dreams to verify astronomical insights. They believed that certain alignments made it easier to commune with divine knowledge during sleep. So your local priest might stay up all night stargazing, or he might just nap on a coral pillow and wake up with the answer. Either way, you now understand. The coral isn't the tool. It's the map. Each one marks a beat in the larger rhythm, and when laid out properly, they can sing the same cosmic song every time. Like vinyl records with no music, just math that sounds like magic. You notice the priest carving a new mark into a fresh piece of coral. He's calm, meticulous, almost reverent. This isn't superstition. This is data entry, Mayan style. He places the new stone beside the others, and you feel the weight of generations behind it. Every eclipse tracked, every stone marked, every one a heartbeat in a 5,000-year calendar that you're only just beginning to understand. Let's get speculative for a moment. There's a theory floating around that some elite priests may have carried these coral stones during ceremonies, tied to their belts like calculators or charms, each one selected for a specific cosmic alignment. When they walked, they jangled, not just with jewelry, but with coded messages from the stars. Imagine if your calculator also doubled as your sacred bling. That's the Mayan vibe. You step back from the table and look at the array of stones. It doesn't look like math. It looks like a ritual puzzle, like something a wizard would use to predict a storm. But that's the point. The Maya didn't divide knowledge the way we do. They didn't have science and religion. They had the way, a living map of the universe where numbers, gods, animals, and seasons were all different faces of the same truth. And if you were the guy with the stones, you weren't just reading the future, you were sculpting it. So tonight, as your eyelids grow heavier and your body sinks deeper into the mattress, picture that chamber. The soft glow of torches, the slow click of coral on stone, the whisper of calendars turning, not in pages, but in patterns, and the quiet certainty that even in the darkest eclipse, someone has already marked the way back to the light. Section 5. You're lying beneath the stars now, back on the temple's rooftop, and the sky stretches above you like a god's unfurled scroll. You've seen coral stones, the observatory, the darkness that eats the sun. But there's something bigger hiding behind it all. Something so enormous, so brain-wrinkling, it makes your smartwatch feel like a toddler with crayons. It's time to talk calendars. The Maya weren't just time-obsessed. They were time-possessed. Their entire worldview was built on cycles, interlocking, repeating, eternal patterns of time that dictated when to plant corn, when to go to war, when to sacrifice, and yes, when the sky would go dark. Let's start with a straight-up historical mic drop. The Mayan calendar system was more accurate than the one you use today. The Gregorian calendar, yours? It fudges the solar year at about 365, 24-25 days. The Mayans nailed it at 365. 2420, without telescopes, without leap years, just sunbeams, shadows, and a fanatical dedication to being very, very early to every cosmic appointment. And that's just the Hob, their 365-day civil calendar. Now mix in the Tzolkin, a sacred 260-day cycle tied to fertility, gods, and corn rituals. That's 2 separate clocks ticking together. You getting déjà vu yet? Because when you combine them, you get the calendar round, a 52-year cycle before the same day-date combo repeats. That's like your birthday falling on a full moon and not happening again on the same weekday until you're pushing retirement. Every calendar round was a big deal. Parties, sacrifices, maybe a little end-of-the-world anxiety, and hovering above all that, the long count, a time-tracking system that measured massive spans of time, reaching back to 14 BCE, the mythical start of the Mayan world. That's before the Egyptian pyramids, before Stonehenge, before most people even figured out how to write. Here's the math twist. The long count used base 20 math, except for one place value, which was base 18, because calendars love drama. So instead of tens and hundreds, they used Keatuns, Baaktuns, and other units that sound like Pokemon evolutions, but are actually chunks of thousands of days. Want to impress your friends at dinner parties? Tell them today is 13, 0, 12, 9, 6 in the Mayan long count. So what does this have to do with eclipses? Everything. Eclipses weren't random. They were predictable only if you understood these calendar rhythms. Solar eclipses follow a cycle, yes, but when overlaid on the long count and the Tzolkin, Certain dates started lighting up like blinking red dots on a divine map. Certain combinations always hinted at the sky swallowing its own sun. And here's the creepy genius part. Priests could see these patterns decades ahead. Using nothing more than codices, shadow markers, and calendar math, they could say, "Ah yes, on 7 Khan 14 Yakskin in the next Baktun, we're probably going to lose the sun for 2 minutes." The people around them, they just saw a guy in feathers whisper to the wind and correctly guess when daylight would die. Now brace yourself for this quirky tidbit. Some of the larger temples in the Yucatan are built to match the calendar itself. Chichen Itza's El Castillo Pyramid, it's got 365 steps, one for each day. During the spring and autumn equinoxes, the sun casts a shadow that looks like a serpent slithering down the side of the stairs. Coincidence? Come on. And it gets nerdier. The pyramid's 18 terraces match the 18 months of the Hab. The 4 staircases, the 4 cardinal directions. This isn't a building. It's a cosmic calculator. And you're standing on top of it in sandals, realizing you've been late to every appointment in your life. Historians still argue whether the Mayans truly grasped the astronomical mechanics of eclipses, moon phases, orbital tilts, lunar nodes, or if their predictions came purely from calendrical pattern recognition. Basically, were they proto-astronomers or just really good Excel wizards? Either way, the result was the same: eerily spot-on solar blackout forecasts. And now, the scary part. Some believe the Mayans didn't just track eclipses, they used them. Think about it. If you knew the exact date and time of an eclipse, you could stage a miracle, or a curse, or a king's death, or the rise of a new one. Want to prove your connection to the gods? Tell everyone you'll make the sun disappear. Then do it. That's not science. That's terrifyingly precise power. You lie back on the pyramid stone, feeling the heat fade from the rock beneath you. The stars are out now, humming with secrets. You think of the coral stones, the calendar math, the endless chant of time layered atop time. But here's the quiet truth the priests knew. The calendars didn't just tell them when the world might end. They told them when it should. Certain dates weren't just cosmically interesting. They were cosmically dangerous. Days when the cycles aligned too perfectly. When the underworld opened its eye and blinked up at you. And so they braced themselves, prepared sacrifices, warned the people, lit fires, marked stones, drew jaguars and serpents and twin-headed death gods in their codices, all because they understood that patterns don't lie. You reach into your pocket and imagine finding one of those coral stones. Its grooves familiar, like a fingerprint from the past. You run your finger along the lines, and for a moment, you swear you feel time stutter. Just slightly, as if the calendar paused to let you listen. So the next time your phone reminds you of some random eclipse coming up in 2027 or 2033, just remember, some barefoot priest 1,000 years ago may have already carved it into coral, and he didn't need a reminder. Section 6. You're in a smoke-filled hut now. The air smells like crushed bark, chilly, and a little bit of fear. A priest, barefoot, bone necklace clinking against his ribs, kneels before something precious. No, not gold, not jade, not even coral this time. It's a book, but not the kind you're thinking of. This one's made of tree bark, folded accordion style. Its pages stiff with lime plaster, covered in glyphs and twisted drawings. You don't touch it. Only the high priests do. Your job is to witness. This is the Dresden Codex, and it's basically the Mayan Book of Shadows. If your Book of Shadows could predict celestial events centuries in advance and had a thing for apocalyptic doom spirals. Let's open it. Carefully. The pages crackle faintly. There, in vibrant reds and faded blacks, you see gods with skeletal faces, moons swallowing suns, rivers of glyphs that look like dreams trying to right themselves. Here's the core fact of this chapter. The Dresden Codex is one of only 4 surviving pre-Columbian Mayan books in existence, and it contains some of the most sophisticated astronomical records in the ancient world. Inside, it charts eclipse cycles, Venus phases, solstices, equinoxes, and even ritual instructions for what to do when the sky freaks out. Now here's the twisted part. It survived because it was stolen. The Codex got its name after ending up in a German library, Dresden, where it sat unnoticed for centuries. The Maya wrote thousands of books like this. The Spanish burned almost all of them. Bonfire after bonfire of irreplaceable science, ritual, and history. One bishop even bragged about it. Pause. Let that sink in. Most of Mayan science, gone. Because someone thought it looked like demon worship. But this one? This book slipped through. You lean closer. A priest turns a page, revealing an image of a black sun dripping blood onto a figure bound in ropes. The glyphs next to it? They don't say Tuesday's eclipse at 11:43 a.m. They say the Death Lord rises. That's the beauty and horror of Mayan cosmology. Even the science looked like a nightmare. The eclipse tables inside the Dresden Codex follow a pattern of 177 or 178 days, matching modern eclipse seasons. Each column represents a half-year interval. Priests used these tables to calculate probable eclipse windows decades in advance. Not exact to the day, but close enough that when it happened, people gasped like someone just opened a trap door in the sky. But here's the twisty fringe tidbit. Some scholars believe there are codes inside the codex. Not just dates, but encoded warnings. Hidden symbols that don't track any known cycle. Some theorists claim these glyphs align with rare astronomical events, like planetary conjunctions or gamma-ray bursts. That's right. Some folks think the Maya accidentally documented space weather before we even had a word for it. Is it true? Well, historians still argue whether the eclipse pages were purely observational or if they carried a prophetic layer tied to political manipulation, divine legitimacy, or planned sacrifices. Because let's be real, if your ruler says, "I will rip open the sky next spring," and then an eclipse hits, you're gonna bow a little lower. Flip to another page. Here's the god Itzamnaj, high on hallucinogens, staring into a mirror made of obsidian, a common ritual item used to see the future. The next glyph? A solar serpent descending from the heavens. The codex isn't linear. It's layered, recursive. You don't read it. You interpret it, like a fever dream with footnotes. And somewhere in the middle of all the doomsday art and divine entrails, you find cold, clear math. Eclipses calculated. You want to laugh, because it shouldn't work. Not with bark paper, not with red clay ink, but it does. And then there's the doomsday page. Oh yes, they have one. At the back of the codex, there's a full-page horror panel. Black rain, skeletal gods, sky serpents vomiting fire, human bones tumbling through space. It's like the final level of a haunted video game. Nobody agrees what it means. Some say it's a myth about past destruction. Others claim it's a warning about a future one. Some say it's already happened. You watch the priest close the codex slowly, like someone sealing a dangerous spell. He wraps it in a jaguar skin cloth and places it inside a stone box, locking it with a carved coral seal. It's not a book anymore. It's a vault of time. You sit back, mind spinning. The coral stones you saw before, the calendars carved in steps, they're all echoes of what's recorded here. This was the master key, and here's something deliciously weird. The Eclipse pages were wet weather resistant. That lime-plastered bark, it held up in humidity. In a culture surrounded by jungles and rainstorms, they made waterproof cosmic spreadsheets before you even got waterproof mascara. So now, close your eyes. Picture this: a dark hut, a book of stars in your lap, the world outside trembling under a blood moon, and in your hands, the power to say whether the gods are angry or just taking a nap. You don't need a telescope. You've got bark, blood, and time. Section 7. You wake to the sound of drums. Not gentle, not rhythmic. These are the kind that make your bones throb. You blink, sit up, and realize the sun hasn't risen yet. It's eclipse morning. But today, it's not just a prediction. It's a production. You're led into the heart of the city. The plaza is packed. Torches hiss in the damp air. The people are quiet, tense. Not because they don't know what's coming, but because they do. They've been warned. The priests told them the sun would vanish this morning. And when that happens, someone must pay for it. Here's the historical truth. The Mayans associated solar eclipses with blood, sacrifice, and cosmic rebalancing. You don't lose your central god to a sky serpent without giving something back. Atop the pyramid stands a man in full regalia. His headdress is too tall for wind. Feathers from birds you've never seen before trail behind him. His chest is painted with black sun symbols, and in his hands is an obsidian blade so sharp it hums. You recognize the priest from before, the one who placed the coral stones, who read from the codex. Today, he's not a quiet scientist. Today, he's the executioner. Now let's not sugarcoat it. The Mayans practiced human sacrifice. Not every day, not in every city, but for big cosmic events like solar eclipses. It was on the table. And not just enemies, sometimes volunteers, nobles, even fellow priests. The reasoning, simple. Blood feeds the gods. The universe runs on reciprocity. The sun gives life. You give a little life back. Think of it like a cosmic toll booth. Want daylight to return? Better offer something juicy. Here's your quirky fact of the night. Some eclipse sacrifices involved a practice called auto-sacrifice, where priests would pierce their own tongues, ears, or genitals, collect the blood on paper, and burn it so the gods could smell the devotion. Yeah, think your job is stressful? And sometimes, the ceremony got a little theatrical. Picture this. At the peak of the eclipse, when the sun is a flaming ring in the sky, dancers dressed as sky serpents slither across the plaza. Drummers pound the rhythm of the heartbeat, slowing. The priest lifts the blade. The crowd gasps. The blood spills. And then, the sun returns, like clockwork. Imagine how that felt to someone watching from below. One moment the sky collapses. Next, it reappears, right after a heart hits the stone floor. Coincidence? Not in their eyes. But here's where it gets complicated. Historians still argue whether sacrifices were timed with eclipses to manipulate belief, or if they were truly believed to cause the sun's return. It's a chicken and blood scenario. Was it theater or theology? Or both? You don't get time to answer. You're watching the sacrifice happen. The air is thick now, like soup. You can barely breathe. The drums stop. A conch shell blows, long and hollow, and the priest holds up the offering. A still heart. The crowd collapses into sobs, chants, prayers. Children are hidden behind cloaks. Elders close their eyes. And then, like a curtain being drawn, light rushes back into the world. It's unsettling. You know the eclipse would have passed anyway, but somehow it feels like the blood brought it back. Like the universe required payment, and someone paid in full. Later, after the chaos, you walk through the plaza. The stone where the sacrifice happened is still slick. Flowers are being laid. The people aren't horrified. They're relieved. The sky is stable again. The gods are full. The balance is restored. It's not just violence. It's maintenance. Like changing the oil in a cosmic engine. Gruesome, necessary, routine. You overhear two women talking. One says her brother volunteered. He had dreams of a snake eating the sun. Said it was his destiny. The other nods, solemn. Better him than all of us. Now, you don't argue. Now let's add a little fringe speculation for your dream journal. Some believe that eclipse sacrifices weren't just about the sky. They were political resets. A ruler out of favor. Time his execution to an eclipse. Need a new dynasty? Sacrifice the old bloodline at the moment the sun disappears. Ritual and regime change in one neat ceremony. You think about that priest again. The one with the coral stones and the obsidian knife. He's both a scholar and a butcher. He can calculate an eclipse and perform a sacrifice in under 5 minutes. And somehow, that duality makes perfect sense here. Because in the Mayan world, knowledge isn't passive, it's bloody. And so, as the sun climbs higher and life returns to its regularly scheduled programming, you feel a little different. You've watched science and sacrifice blend into something strange, beautiful, and horrifying. It makes you wonder, what if our own world still runs on rituals? Not blood on stone, maybe, But credit scores, calendar invites, status symbols, invisible systems that keep the machine turning. Are we really so different? Or did we just trade obsidian blades for Bluetooth? Tonight, as your body softens into the sheets, think of that moment. The sun reborn, the people chanting, the priest exhaling in relief. The balance held for now, because the next eclipse is already coming, and someone will have to pay. Section 8. You're still in the plaza. The sun is bright again, almost too bright, like it's overcompensating for its earlier vanishing act. The crowd has thinned. The dancers have collapsed in heaps, breathing hard, their serpent costumes soaked through. But up on the temple platform, the real performance is just beginning. The priest is no longer alone. He's joined by others now, each draped in jaguar pelts, obsidian beads, and headdresses so tall you wonder how they don't tip over. Their eyes are outlined in ash. They move slowly, deliberately, and the way people part for them, you get it. These are the sky-gazing elite, the keepers of time, the ones who can whisper to stars and expect an answer. Here's the fact of the hour. Mayan astronomers were part of the priestly and noble class, a hybrid of scientist, mathematician, sorcerer, and public relations expert. They weren't just sky nerds. They were the foundation of political power. Because if you could predict when the sun would vanish, when Venus would reappear, or when the gods expected their share of blood, you didn't just understand the world, you controlled it. And this is where it gets juicy. You watch one of the astronomer priests step forward. He's holding a bark paper codex. The crowd goes silent. He opens it, points to a page, and declares, "In 4 days, the moon will cry." The people gasp. What he means, of course, is a lunar eclipse. But moon tears sounds better in marketing. And right then, the city ruler, decked in gold, perched under a canopy, nods solemnly. Because this prediction will become part of a larger ritual, one the king already planned. Maybe he'll use it to legitimize a tax increase, maybe to marry off his daughter, maybe to quietly execute a rival. You see, the astronomers weren't just tracking the sky, they were arming the throne. Every eclipse, every comet, every weird alignment was political capital. A sign from the gods that now was the time to conquer a rival city, build a new temple, or start a year-long ceremony involving jaguar bones and possibly frogs. The elite priest astronomers, let's call them the calendrical mafia, knew how to stage a spectacle. They used sacred math and predictive magic like a weapon. You step back and realize something chilling. This whole civilization is built on prediction. And when predictions came true, the people bowed lower. Here's your fringe snack of the night. There's a theory that some Mayan rulers may have manipulated eclipse data to engineer fear. Like a magician forcing a card, they may have announced an eclipse slightly early or slightly late, just to keep the illusion of divine connection alive. Was it deception or just show business? Historians still argue whether astronomy was shared openly or guarded like a trade secret. In some city-states, there's evidence it was passed down within priestly families only, like an inheritance. In others, it seems it may have been more widely studied, at least among the upper class. But if you were a peasant, forget it. You learned only what the priests told you, and that was enough to keep you obedient. You follow one of the astronomers through a narrow hallway. The walls are carved with glyphs. You pause. One panel shows a ruler holding a coral stone in one hand and a decapitated head in the other. So, yeah, subtle. Inside the chamber is a carved stone seat, a throne. But not for a king. This one faces a small hole in the wall through which the sky peeks in. You sit, you wait. After a minute, a beam of light pierces through the hole and lands directly on a small carved glyph of Venus. This is how they knew. The elite didn't guess. They built palaces and temples that functioned as astronomical calculators. The king sat here, saw the light fall on Venus, and declared, "Let there be war." The people believed him because the gods had spoken through architecture and sunbeam. You remember that time back in modern life when someone read your horoscope out loud and you laughed? Yeah. These guys built entire economies around horoscopes that worked. Even Venus, which they called Chak-Ek, was sacred. They tracked its cycles with incredible precision. The Dresden Codex has an entire table dedicated to it, used for both war planning and eclipse timing. Some battles were only fought when Venus rose as the morning star, because its energy was believed to be most lethal then. And now, here's something poetic for your tired mind. The Mayans believed that the elite themselves were connected to celestial bodies. A king wasn't just a ruler. He was a living embodiment of time itself, the human vessel through which the gods communicated. So when a solar eclipse occurred, and the king guided the sun back with a sacrifice or a chant or a huge ritual, he wasn't just performing. He was literally saving the world. No pressure. Now you lie back, mind spinning like one of their calendar wheels. The coral stones, the bark codices, the palaces that align with Venus, and the men in jaguar cloaks, sipping fermented honey while doing math that still confuses us. You realize something important. It wasn't about understanding the sky. It was about owning it. So close your eyes and picture that royal astronomer, eyes smeared with ash, gaze steady, calendar in one hand, and blood-soaked dagger in the other. He looks up at the sky and whispers a number, and the sun obeys. Section 9. The jungle path is damp and winding now, and the air is so thick you could chew it. Your legs ache from climbing endless limestone steps, but the guide ahead insists. This is the good stuff. You duck beneath low-hanging vines and emerge into a clearing where ancient stones form a wide circle, half swallowed by roots. You're not in a city this time. You're somewhere older, quieter, forgotten by tourists, maybe even by history, but not by the sun. This is one of the Stone Circle solar sink sites. Places built not for worship or sacrifice, but for precision. There's no throne, no altar, just moss-covered markers arranged in a way that seems chaotic, until the light hits just right, and you realize this is a giant clock. Let's get straight to the fact. The Maya built numerous ceremonial plazas, ball courts, and stone circles aligned with solar and lunar events, especially solstices, equinoxes, and eclipses. These weren't accidents. They were deliberate architectural calculations, carved into the very earth. Step between the stones. You feel it before you see it. The way the light slices through two tall markers and lands on a third. The sun is rising. It hits a stone etched with glyphs shaped like jaws, snakes, and naturally, a jaguar. This alignment only happens twice a year, on the solstices. And it's likely the same stone was used to anticipate eclipse seasons, which tend to cluster around equinoxes. You've got a sky-powered algorithm right under your feet. The Maya didn't build observatories with domes and telescopes. They used terrain, light, and shadow. A line of stones on a hilltop, a notch carved into a wall, a crack in a cave ceiling. If the sun touched it on the right day, they'd mark it, chant it, and, if the signs were right, sacrifice something. And don't let the simplicity fool you. The alignment precision on some of these structures is within half a degree. That's better than most middle school science projects, and frankly, a few modern parking lots. You kneel by one of the stones. It's warm, etched with the familiar bars and dots. Another calendar, another note in the Mayan cosmic symphony. Coral stones were personal, codices were intellectual. But these circles, they were public truth. Now here's a quirky little detour. Some of these sites seem to track not just the sun, but sound. That's right. Clap in the middle of some ceremonial plazas, and the echo comes back like the chirp of a quetzal bird, the sacred symbol of divine kingship. So on solstice mornings, when the sun rose and struck the central stone, a clap from the priest might have echoed like a bird call from the heavens. Coincidence? Or a designed miracle? Historians still argue whether these alignments were meant solely for astronomical observation, or if they doubled as performance spaces where celestial timing and ritual drama merged. Did the light and echo serve science, or was it all about spectacle? Probably both. You walk the circle now, counting the stones. Some are taller than you, some barely poking through the moss. A few have toppled, but enough remain to feel the shape of it. You pause at a particularly worn marker. On it is a carving, subtle but unmistakable. A black sun with jagged lines radiating outward and tiny figures kneeling beneath it. This was an eclipse marker, maybe even a warning. Think about it. The average person back then couldn't read a codex, but they could recognize this carving, the darkened sun, the fearful humans, a silent message carved in stone. Something terrible happened here. It will happen again. And when it did, the circle would once again fill with people. Drums, smoke, sacrifices, predictions. You start to see how this all ties together. The coral stones were the code. The codices were the textbooks. The temples were the rituals. But the stone circles were the calendar itself. You sit down at the center of the circle. The sky is just starting to cloud over, casting strange shadows between the stones. For a moment, you feel the breath of time against your cheek. This is where they measured reality. No fluff, no gods, just sun, shadow, and stone. But of course, the gods always found a way in. Let's dip into the fringe for your nightly dose of wait what? Some people believe that certain circles were built not just for solar tracking, but for celestial energy harnessing. Energy lines, earth chakras, all that juicy pseudo-scientific goodness. Supposedly, when the sun hits the center stone at the solstice, it activates the site. Is there evidence? Not really. But hey, you're lying in a jungle calendar right now. Let's not pretend anything is off the table. You lean back, resting your head on warm rock. The light creeps across your face. It's not just sunlight. It's information. Ancient, precise, encoded in stone. A message that says, we were watching. We understood. We counted every shadow, and we knew when the sky would fall. Tonight, when you fall asleep, you'll hear more than jungle sounds. You'll hear the echo of feet around a stone circle, the whisper of dates carved in coral, the heartbeat rhythm of priests watching the horizon, and the terrifying beauty of a civilization that saw time coming and built a city to meet it. Section 10. You're standing on a cliff now, waves crashing below, salt in your nose, sea spray on your face. The jungle's gone. The pyramid steps are far behind you. Welcome to Tulum, the Mayan city by the sea. It's beautiful, peaceful, almost too peaceful. Then you notice it. 2 narrow windows carved into the stone wall of the temple of the wind god, aligned so perfectly that when the sun rises at certain times of year, its beam shines straight through both openings, like a laser from the heavens. And if you're standing in the right spot, you get blinded. This is no accident. It's the Tulum lighthouse trick, and it's arguably the most charming piece of ancient Eclipse tech ever carved by a civilization with 0 telescopes and absolutely no time for your disbelief. Here's the fact. Tulum's temple windows are astronomically aligned to mark specific solar and lunar events, including, it's believed by some scholars, upcoming eclipses. Whether used as a countdown marker or just part of a broader observational system, they were built to catch the attention of the sky watchers exactly when it mattered most. But why here? Why the coast? Simple. The sea was sacred. The horizon was clean. You could see everything. No mountains. No trees. Just sky and water. A perfect canvas for celestial timing. And unlike the jungle-bound observatories with their dramatic shadows and coded light traps, Tulum's trick was all about line of sight. Imagine this. You're a priest with a coral stone calendar. You know the cycles. You've seen the signs. And now you stand here, watching the morning sun pour through a stone slit like clockwork. You nod. It's time. You send a messenger, a drumbeat, a conch horn, maybe even a fleet of painted canoes heading inland with news. The eclipse is coming. Prepare the people, sharpen the blades, ready the songs. Because this lighthouse, it's not warning sailors. It's warning the sun. Let's lean into a little-known fringe twist. Some believe these windows were part of a larger maritime network of observatories, that across the Mayan coastline, similar light capture structures existed, connected through travel routes and ritual messengers. a kind of jungle internet, powered by geometry and boats. It's speculative, but tempting. We know the Maya traveled hundreds of miles by sea, trading obsidian, jade, cacao. Why not eclipse data too? But here's where things get extra weird. The windows don't just mark the sun's rising points. Some scholars argue that at certain times of the year, they align with the moon set. Not often, just rarely enough to feel intentional. And that's when the eclipses happen, when the sun and moon are caught in the same line, dancing toward destruction. So yeah, this temple, it's a trigger point, a warning bell, a cosmic, hey, you might want to look up right now. You step into the temple. It's small, humble. The walls are chipped. The wind whistles through the windows like a flute. But then the light hits your face. Just a sliver. Direct. Blinding. That beam once meant the sky was about to go dark. And the people of Tulum, they didn't panic. They prepared. Back then, preparation meant rituals, bathing in cold cenotes to purify your body, fastings, chants, symbolic offerings, corn, flowers, feathers. Not every eclipse required blood. Sometimes, it just needed respect, stillness, awareness. You leave the temple and walk along the cliff's edge. The sea below is restless, roaring louder now. You picture a priest here, long ago, standing in the same spot, robes flapping in the wind, watching the sky with a certainty you can't quite wrap your head around. Because that's the real power of the Mayan eclipse system. Not just the math or the stones or the rituals, but the confidence, the quiet, cosmic calm in the face of celestial chaos. Historians still argue whether Tulum's temple was primarily for astronomy, defense, or ritual. Maybe it was all three, or maybe the lines we draw between those roles didn't exist for the Maya. Maybe everything they built was meant to do many things at once. Mark the solstice, honor the gods, and scare the crap out of anyone who questioned their authority. And honestly, it worked. Because you're standing here, hundreds of years later, staring through a hole in a wall, and you're stunned. The sun aligns, the beam strikes, and for a moment, you feel it. The hush, the awareness, the silent chant of time passing. You reach into your pouch, pull out a smooth coral stone, hold it in the sunbeam. It glows faintly. You smile, because now you understand. This was the alarm clock of a civilization. Not a scream, not a panic. Just a whisper of light through stone that said, "Wake up. Something divine is about to happen." Section 11. It's deep night now. The jungle's chorus has settled into a sleepy rhythm. Frogs croaking like rusty doors. Leaves whispering secrets. Distant howler monkeys having one last existential scream. But you're not sleeping yet. Because tonight, you're going inside. Not a building, not a codex, but a headspace, a trance. The blurred edge where logic ends and ritual begins. Welcome to the murky overlap of Mayan science and sorcery. It's weirder than you think. Let's start with a solid fact. Mayan astronomy was deeply intertwined with religious ritual and altered states of consciousness. This wasn't science as we know it. There was no lab coat, no peer review. Here, prediction came from a blend of observations, symbols, dreams, and sometimes enemas. Yes, that wasn't a typo. We'll get to that. You're inside a cave temple now. Flickering torches throw shadows against walls carved with star glyphs, serpents, moons. In the center, a priest sits cross-legged, eyes rolled back, pupils gone. A low hum vibrates through his chest. In front of him, a mirror made of polished obsidian, round and black as a swallowed eclipse. This is how the Mayans talked to time. They believed obsidian mirrors could reveal future events, particularly celestial phenomena like eclipses. The mirror wasn't a metaphor. It was a literal portal, a divine interface. And the priest? He wasn't just stargazing. He was time-traveling. You kneel. He places a piece of coral stone in your hand. It's etched with tiny bars and dots, numbers, prediction, math. But he doesn't calculate. He doesn't measure angles. He just stares into the black mirror and breathes. And here's where it gets juicy. Some rituals required hallucinogenic substances, often administered through, enemas, because the absorption was faster and the visions more intense. Why spend 6 hours chewing leaves when you can fast-track a vision of the Eclipse demon in 20 seconds? It sounds absurd, but it wasn't a joke. It was sacred. Altered states weren't recreation. They were instruments, tools, just like coral stones or temples. The body was a temple too, and sometimes, to see the stars clearly, you had to turn off the mind's distractions. Fringe time. Some modern spiritualists believe obsidian mirrors still hold power, that they store energy from the people who use them. That maybe, just maybe, when a Mayan priest stared into one during an eclipse, he wasn't just watching, he was recording. And the mirror still remembers. Historians still argue whether these trance practices were real science or symbolic showmanship. Did the priests believe they were seeing the future, or just connecting emotionally with natural cycles? Or were the visions just the side effect of fermented honey, magic mushrooms, and tropical colonics? You lean in. The obsidian is cold. Your reflection shifts in the flickering light. For a second, just a second, you swear you see the black sun, that perfect, terrifying eclipse you've been chasing across these jungle nights. But it fades. The priest exhales. He murmurs a date, another eclipse, another ritual, another notch in time's spiral spine. Let's step back and think about this. All across the world, ancient astronomers used tools, stone circles, shadow markers, sundials. But only here did they combine those tools with divination, bloodletting, dreams, and psychotropic enemas. Why? Because to the Maya, truth wasn't only observed, it was felt. Time wasn't a concept, it was a presence. And sometimes, to meet it properly, you had to alter your own presence. Back outside, you walk through the mist. The jungle is alive again, buzzes rising like static. You pass another ceremonial platform. On it, 4 priests stand facing the 4 cardinal directions. Each holds a different tool: a codex, a coral stone, an obsidian mirror, and a bowl of smoking herbs. They begin to chant. It's not for show. They're syncing themselves, body, breath, sound, with the movement of the stars. For the Maya, eclipses were moments of thinness, when the veil between worlds shrank. And if you didn't meet that moment properly aligned, bad things happened. And so the rituals, not to impress the gods, but to sync with them. Modern science has removed that layer. We measure, we observe, we chart. But the Maya lived their science, felt it in their bones, heard it in their dreams, tripped on it in their sacred caves. You lie back now, grass against your neck, the stars scattered overhead like forgotten coral stones. You wonder what kind of person you'd have been in that world. The observer, the dreamer, the mirror gazer. Would you trust the numbers or the visions? Because in the Mayan world, you needed both. You needed the math and the madness. Only then could you understand the sky. Section 12. The jungle is still. Too still. You're walking slowly now, barefoot again, through the ruins of a once grand city. The stones are cracked. The temples are crumbling. Roots snake through everything. The carved glyphs? Faded, like stories whispered too many times. You feel it before you understand it. The Mayans are gone. Not vanished in a puff of mystery. They dwindled, collapsed, shifted. Their cities emptied, their roads overgrown, their rulers dethroned not by war or conquest, but by time itself. And the sky kept moving. Let's start with the real stuff. By the 9th century, many major Mayan cities were abandoned, their populations declining rapidly. Food shortages, droughts, civil unrest, political upheaval. Historians are still debating the exact cocktail of disaster. But whatever it was, it came fast. And it came hard. But here's what haunts you. They kept predicting eclipses. Even as the temples emptied. Even as trade routes broke down. Even as the jungle clawed its way back into courtyards, once filled with ritual fire and sacred chants. They kept watching the sky. There's a final codex fragment, rarely mentioned, where the eclipse tables abruptly stop. Not because the math ends, but because the scribe does. The ink trails off mid-symbol. No finish. Just nothing. Did he flee? Did he die? Did he look up one last time, realize no one was listening anymore, and drop the stylus? You sit among the ruins now, watching the sun rise through a shattered temple window. Light cuts across a half-buried coral stone. The date etched into it? It predicted an eclipse. And that eclipse happened after the city fell. You get it now. The knowledge outlived the people. Their math didn't need crowds. Their stones didn't need applause. The sky still moved. The stones still worked. And maybe that was the point. Now here's a fringe whisper to end on. Some believe the Maya knew their end was coming, that their calendars didn't just predict celestial events, but societal ones. That in the final long count dates, tucked behind the eclipses and Venus risings, are warnings. Death of dynasties, shifts in the world's order. Not doom, just change. Historians still argue whether this is wishful thinking, projecting mystery where there's only decay, or whether the Maya really did see further than we ever will. Not with tech, but with time. You rise from the stone and walk slowly through what's left. A broken statue, a glyph worn down to nothing but curves, a stairway that leads nowhere. And then, from the corner of your eye, you spot it. A perfect circle of coral stones, half sunk in dirt. One of them glows faintly in the morning sun. You brush the moss off. It bears a date, not from the past, from your future. The moment lands heavy, because it means one thing. The Maya are still predicting. You lie down one last time, arms spread against the earth, face warmed by the same sun they once feared, worshipped, tamed. The wind rustles through broken palm fronds. A bird calls out. And the sky, still here, still watching, still counting. The jungle breathes softer now. The sky has calmed, and the light through the trees has melted into honey-colored shadows. Your limbs feel heavy, just the right kind of heavy. That good kind, the kind that tells you the story has settled inside you, that maybe the knowledge is still flickering behind your eyes, like torchlight on obsidian. Let the coral stones fall back into the soil. Let the temples grow moss again. Let the priests sleep and the jaguar masks gather dust. The sun will rise tomorrow. The sky will darken again. And someone, somewhere, will count the days until it does. But for now, you don't need to remember the math, or the dates, or the glyphs. Just remember the quiet, the rhythm, the way time doesn't shout. It whispers, in eclipses, in shadows, in smooth stones hidden beneath your feet. You did well tonight. You walked through centuries of stars. And now, it's okay to let go. Sink into the stillness. Let your breath slow. There's nothing left to track. No gods left to feed. The calendar wheel can turn without you for a while. You've earned your rest. Good night, Sky Watcher. Good night, Sun Chaser. Good night, Time Traveler.